Hey guys, and welcome back. It's Grant Broggi from the Strength Co. And today I want to talk about what about people that can't squat to depth? I know some of you feel this way, but what I can tell you is that you can squat to depth. And I'm going to show you today how. If you like the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Now, there's a reason that we teach people to squat the way that we do. Put your heels under your shoulders or roughly thereabout. Turn your toes out about 30 degrees. Sit back, lean over, shove your knees out, and wait until your hip crease gets just below parallel of your kneecap. And while this works for 90 to 95% of almost everyone in the first try, from time to time, there are people that cannot reach depth when they first try this method. And that's what we're here to fix today. There are a lot of people on the internet talking about mobility, flexibility, dorsiflexion of the ankle, ankle mobility, knee mobility. And while all those things are important, I just think they're probably viewing it wrong. Most people can squat to depth, and if they can't, 9 times out of 10, it's a problem here and not necessarily the fact that they can't squat to depth. So today, I want to show you how to fix this problem. Over the last few weeks, we've done a couple camps at our gym, and out of the pool of people, I don't know, 50 or so that we've seen, we did have someone recently that when you tried to get her to squat to depth, she struggled. We ended up fixing her and she's totally squatting fine, but I want to take you through the process of what we did, so let's take a look. So first of all, we're going to look at Coach Jeff here, very skilled coach, coaching Gracie in the squat. You'll notice that he puts her heels right underneath her shoulders, turns her toes out about 30 degrees, and then has her clasp her hands together like she's going to pray, and then squat down and shove her knees out. For 95% of people, this works, but you can tell right here, she's kind of struggling. That's not depth, she's a little bit high. So here she is, pushing her knees out to the best of her ability, but her hip crease is clearly very high above the tip of her kneecap or the patella of the knee tendon. So as she goes to squat down further, and Jeff is working her there, she starts to lose her balance. She's laughing, she's giggling. You can tell her toes are coming off the ground, and she's struggling to get to depth. So he's gonna work on her for a minute, try and push that down further. And the more she goes down, the more she starts to lose her balance and almost want to fall over. Jeff works with her for a second, tries to kind of make sure she's okay, and then she still is struggling to get to depth. This happens from time to time with people. There is such a thing as dorsiflexion, mobility, flexibility, whatever. Some people are tight, but what I'm telling you is that you're gonna see in a minute Gracie squat to depth with weight with no issue. So what's the give? If we look here, what we can see is that basically she's not getting enough mass forward, meaning like some of her body weight. So when she's trying to squat to depth, she's trying to lean back. And that's making her toes come up and she feels like she's gonna fall over. Now she's stressed, she can't squat to depth, she doesn't understand why, but Gracie's fine and we're gonna fix her. When I was watching Gracie squat and thinking in her mind, oh my goodness, I can't squat to depth, I was reminded of a lot of people I've coached before, but one in particular a few years ago whose name was Sergio. Sergio, a good friend of mine, really struggled to hit depth. So much so, this was maybe 4 years ago, I hadn't seen this problem before, and I sent this video to Mark Ripito. You know who he is. So here we are with Sergio attempting the same drill. And what you can see with Sergio is he's in position, we're trying to get him down, I'm forcibly putting him down, and if my knee is not behind him right now, Sergio's actually going to fall over. Now, here in a second, I'm gonna take my knee away and Sergio is going to fall over. But before he falls over, what you can see is I'm putting my hand on his chest, and what I'm doing is keeping him in balance. So think about this for a second. Before he falls back because of maybe the lack of some type of flexibility or whatever, I'm putting his mass forward. And when I talked to Mark Ripito, what he said to me is, this isn't a dorsiflexion problem. This is a physics problem. Explain to him the situation that mass must be forward. So you're probably thinking in your head, well, Grant, this guy must be weak. That's why he can't squat to depth. That's why Gracie can't squat to depth. But check it out. This is the same week Here he is deadlifting 195 pounds. He ended up being a 300, or still is, a 350 pound plus deadlifter even with his light frame. So is it possible that some people just can't squat to depth? No, well, maybe. There are definitely some instances that could happen, but for most people, like 95, 98, maybe 99%, you can squat to depth. You just have to understand what's going on. So let me show you what I did for Gracie. So rewind, remember Gracie? I took her back to the platform when I had her and I did the same things that Coach Jeff tried to do, and sure enough, on her own initial attempt, she could not hit depth. So I took what Mark Ripito told me, it's a physics problem. And I added that in real life in real time, because ultimately the lifter is going to have a load on their back and be leaning over, which is going to keep them in balance. But sometimes showing them what that feels like before the bars on the back can really help. So we used a weight as a ballast. So here's Gracie, I hand her a 10-pound weight, I tell her to hold it out. This is right after she couldn't squat to depth, and take a look. There she is, way too deep, 3-4 inches below parallel. I tell her to hold it out, not go quite as deep, and now she has a counterweight and she's able to hit depth because she understands that the mass of her upper body has to be forward. So this is a big teaching point and something you have to understand. If I'm sitting my hips back to load them and therefore strengthen my posterior chain, then some of my weight has to go forward, but everyone wants to stay upright. So when Gracie and Sergio were trying to keep everything upright, their balance was shifting back to their heels and they wanted to fall over. When I gave her a weight to hold out in front of her, she realized, oh, mass has to go forward. So let's look at how she was squatting after just a few sets on the very same day that she couldn't squat to depth. So here she is, literally just a few minutes later. Let's take a look. She's now got a load on her back. I started with a bar, but now she's up to 65 pounds. We're working on hip drive here because even though she's not falling over, we still need to teach her how to drive with her hips. And at first she's not quite hitting depth, but if you keep watching here, she gets down there and she's totally at depth. She's hitting depth. A woman who a few minutes ago thought it was impossible to squat to depth is doing it. And I can tell you this method works. So if your lifter is struggling, if you are struggling, if you read the book Starting Strength, you open it up, you put your feet in the right position, you try to squat down and you can't get to depth, maybe just grab something, put the weight out in front of you and feel what that feels like. The moral, the whole point of the story is you've got to get mass, if this is your hips, behind you, but you've also got to get mass in front of you. If you want to train the posterior chain, you've got to sit back and you've got to lean over. This is a method that works if you're trying to teach someone to squat, or if you can't squat, sit back, lean over, commit to it. If you need to grab a weight during a teaching moment to hold it out in front of you and feel that sensation, then by all means do it. But you can squat to depth. And stop squatting lots of weights high. I'm tired of seeing it on the internet. Please, if you like the channel, like and subscribe. We would love to have you. We'll see you next time.